I'm standing there watching them proclaim white power and all this and using racial epithets. And then they light this big cross on fire. And, it's surreal. It's really surreal. And so I formed a question in my mind at that age, which was, how can you hate me when you don't even know me?
How many people at the height of the Ku Klux Klan, how many members did they have?
At the height of the Ku Klux Klan, this would be in the 1920s into the early 1930s, they estimated between 4 million and 6 million. And no white man ever got arrested for killing a black man back in the day. That was the way it was in this country. But I am the impetus for over 200 white supremacists to renounce that ideology and give up their robes and hoods and swastika flags and all that. I was the one who inspired them to do that. And that came through conversation. These people, Grand Dragons, Imperial, their members look up to them. They're like rock stars. They literally, these are your idols. I've seen them sign autographs for their members. I mean, what the heck? And they tell me the Ku Klux Klan, the Proud Boys, the Patriot Front, the neo-Nazis, on and on. Daryl, I don't want my grandkids to be brown. They call it the browning of America.
Do you think Donald Trump's racist?
Absolutely. But you also have the Klansmen who went all the way to the White House and became president of the United States. All right? President Warren G. Harding was sworn into the Ku Klux Klan in the green room of the White House.
This week's episode is You can now follow me on all my social media platforms to find out who my latest guest will be. And don't forget to click the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you're notified for when my next podcast goes live. And boom, we're on. And today's guest, we've got Daryl Davies. Daryl, how are we?
I'm wonderful. Thank you for having me. Good to be with you.
Thanks for coming on the show. Thank you for letting me into your house.
My pleasure.
Fascinating story. But first, we'll promote your book straight away, The Klan Whisperer. You were the man who used to go around the KKK and kind of befriend the Klan dragons, the sort of top of the pyramid, and talk to them. It took you a while, months, years to eventually get through, but you've done some amazing work, and it's an absolute honour to be sitting across from you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Where can people buy your books, Daryl?
You can buy it on Amazon, Amazon UK, Amazon.com, Amazon AU for Australia.
Perfect. Before we get into everything though, I always like to go back to the start of my guests to get more of a bit of understanding about you, Daryl, where you grew up and how it all began.
Sure. Well, I'm age 67. I'll soon be 68. And I was born in Chicago. My parents are from Virginia. And I was a child of parents in the U.S. Foreign Service. I grew up as an American embassy kid. I began traveling all over the world beginning at the age of 3 with my parents. I was born in 1958, so that'd be 1961. And so how it works is you get assigned to a foreign country by the U.S. State Department for 2 years with the American Embassy. And then at the end of the assignment, you return home here to the States. You may be here for a few months, maybe even a year, and then you get reassigned to another country abroad. So back and forth were the formative years of my life. My first introduction to school was overseas in a foreign country. I did kindergarten, first grade, third grade, fifth grade, seventh grade, all in different schools in different countries. So now, that being my first introduction to school, that became my baseline for what school is supposed to be. The interesting thing was this, that I had no idea. I thought it was the norm. Overseas, when I went to school, my classmates were from all over the world, because anybody who had an embassy from their country stationed where we were, all of their children went to the same school. So this little girl sitting here might have been from Scotland. This girl sitting here, or boy, might have been from Nigeria, kid in front of me from Italy, kid behind me from Japan, Russia. If you opened the door to my classroom and put your head in, you would say, oh my, this looks like a United Nations of little children, because that's exactly what it was. So that became my baseline to how I viewed school. But things changed. Every time I come back home here to my own country, because I would do the in-between grades here, I was either in all black schools or black and white schools, meaning the still segregated or the newly integrated. Now, desegregation was passed by our U.S. Supreme Court in 1954, which is 4 years before I was born. So the first time I went to an integrated school back home here was in 1968, because schools did not integrate overnight once the court passed this law, right? It took years and years. And even today, in 2026, in some parts of this country, we are still struggling with integration. So back to the story. 1968, I'm coming back. I'm age 10. I'm in 4th grade, and I go to a newly integrated school. There are only 2 black kids in the whole school, me in the 4th grade and a little black girl in the 2nd grade. That was it. So consequently, my friends were 4th and 5th graders, and they all were white. Now, several of my male friends were members of what we have here called the Cub Scouts. You're familiar with the Boy Scouts, so they're like junior Boy Scouts. And they invited me to join. This is 1968. So I joined the Cub Scouts. I was the only, it's back here in the States, I was the only Black Scout anywhere in the area. And we had a parade. And people were waving and cheering and smiling, having a good time until we reached a certain point in this parade route when now I'm getting hit with soda pop bottles, cans, small debris from the street. And I turned to look to see who's hitting me because it's coming from over here on my right side. And I saw a couple of kids, maybe perhaps a year or 2 older than me, and a couple of adults who were throwing things. My first thought was, oh, these people over here, they don't like the Scouts. That's how naive I was, because I had no precedent for this behavior. It wasn't until my Scout leaders came running and they covered me with their bodies. And these are white people. And they quickly escorted me out of the danger. And now I'm realizing I am the only participant in this march, in this parade, who's getting this special protection. Nobody else was getting it. So now I'm thinking I had done something to make these people angry. I didn't even know them, and I kept asking my Scout leaders, why are they doing this? I didn't do anything. Why are they doing this? And all they would do is kind of shush me and tell me to rush, move along, hurry up. Everything will be okay. And so I moved along, but they never answered my question. So at the end of the day, the march is over. I still had no answer. I go home. My mother and father, who were not present for the parade, they had something else going on that afternoon. They were at home, and they're cleaning me up and putting Band-Aids on me and asking me, how did you fall down and get all scraped up? I told them I didn't fall down. I told them exactly what had happened. And for the first time in my life, my mother and father sat me down and explained to me what racism was. At the age of 10, I had never heard the word racism. I had no idea what they were talking about. And that's why it's so important to understand my background, because I grew up around everybody from all over the world. This racism thing did not exist in my world. And when they were telling me this, I remember very clearly, I did not believe them, because my 10-year-old brain could not process the idea that somebody who had never seen me, never spoken to me, knew nothing about me, would want to hurt me for no other reason than this, the color of my skin. This makes no sense. My parents are obviously wrong, and they assured me that they were right. But to prove that they were wrong and I was right, I pointed out the fact that my fellow Scouts did not look any different than the people on the sidewalk throwing things. My friends overseas, whether they were my little Danish or Swedish or Norwegian or French or German friends, looked the same as those people. So it had nothing to do with the color of my skin. So my parents assured me that this was the case, this racism thing that I never heard of. And I still did not believe my parents, but this was 1968. And I remember this very clearly. On April the 4th, 1968, Martin Luther King was assassinated, and every major city in this country burned to the ground with violence and destruction, all in the name of this new word that I had learned called racism. So now I understood that my parents had not lied to me. This phenomenon that I never heard of does exist. But what I did not understand was why. And so I formed a question in my mind at that age, which was, how can you hate me when you don't even know me? And so I've been seeking the answer to that question. So now, who better to pose that question to than someone who would go so far as to join an organization with over 100-year history of practicing hating people who do not look like them and who do not believe as they believe. So that's how I became involved with meeting with members of the Ku Klux Klan, neo-Nazis, and other white supremacists to find the answer to my question, how can you hate me when you don't even know me? And I wrote books about that.
See, when you were at school, where did you see the most racism? It might sound a daft question, but when you were at the all-black school, was there still racism against whites? And when you were at the mixed school, was there racism towards both? What school did you see that people spoke the most racism?
In the integrated school. You know, in the black school, there was no racism because there were no white people there.
Yeah, but did they speak about it? Did they speak about
No,
this?
not really. No. You just went there, you know, and you made your friends, you played, you just carried on. And I'm sure in the white schools, you know, they didn't really talk about black kids either. You know, kids are kids. It's when the adults get involved and start, you know, tainting their minds and their way of thinking that you begin to see the other as the enemy.
Yeah, because no one's born racist.
Exactly.
And
it's a learned behavior.
Yeah, the brain is a program. So the way people see the world is because the way they've been conditioned. I interviewed a man, Johnny Adair. He fought for the UDA in Belfast.
Mm-hmm.
But he says if he grew up 1 mile down the road, he would have been fighting for the IRA. Now, the world is so big. Now, if people are staying in a 10-mile, 20-mile radius, it's like a grain of salt in this earth. So people, how they see the world, it's their circumstances, it's their surroundings. It's when you start understanding, like I travel the world, I speak to anyone and everyone, and the majority of human beings are good people. Social media and other stuff will make us think the world is falling apart. Yes, there's badness, but there's also goodness. What the Ku Klux Klan, what is the history? How did it begin? Where did it start?
Okay, well, it was founded in 1865 at the end of our Civil War here in this country. It was founded by 6 Confederate soldiers, and they were of Irish and Scottish descent. And so they wanted, you know, so slavery was abolished, and the slaves had to be freed. But these 6 soldiers want to carry on the traditions of the Confederacy, because, you know, the Civil War in this country was fought to preserve slavery. They wanted to keep slavery, and they lost. So now I can no longer own you as a piece of property. I have to free you, but you will never sit at my dinner table. You will not, you know, date my daughters. You will not be equal to my sons. You know, we're going to keep you subservient. You will drink from that water fountain, not from this water fountain. You will use that restroom, not this restroom. You cannot eat in that restaurant. You have to find your own restaurant. So segregation was imposed. And the Ku Klux Klan was formed to maintain this separation, this supremacy. You know, because I cannot own you does not mean I'm going to treat you as an equal. You will never be my equal. So that's why it was formed.
And when was the first rally you went to? When was the first KKK rally you went to? How did that come about?
The first one I went to was probably in the 1980s. And it was pretty crazy, you know.
Did you understand it before you went? Were you doing a lot of research to figure out who these people are, what they were about, and why they hated on someone because of their skin color?
I read every book written on the Klan, okay, and white supremacy. Also purchased books on black supremacy, on neo-Nazis, on the Nazis in Germany, anti-Semitism, racism, to try to understand how do you arrive at this mentality. As you pointed out, this is not something that you're born with. It is learned behavior. And so I knew that what can be learned can be unlearned. But I did not seek to change anybody. I just wanted to find out, how did you arrive at this ideology and why do you practice it, especially when you don't know someone? How can you hate that person just because of the color of their skin or who they worship or where they worship or how they worship?
What was your family saying when you were researching all this?
Well, my father, he was a U.S. diplomat. His job was to go to these foreign countries on behalf of the United States government to create better relations between the U.S. government and whatever government in the country where we served, right? So he understood, diplomacy. My mother was ill at the time that that I began doing this, and so not too much long after she passed away. So she never got to see me in this role. I was getting into music and becoming a professional musician then.
So how many levels is there on the pyramid?
Yes. Okay. So let me give you the hierarchy of the Klan. Today and for a long time, there has been no Ku Klux Klan. All right. There have been many Ku Klux Klans, plural. Back when it was first founded, there was one Ku Klux Klan. It was centralized. And then there were chapters of that one Klan, spreading out to different states. It was founded in Pulaski, Tennessee, all right, and it grew and spread to other states. Now, when you have you have one leader in the original Klan, one leader, all right, and that leader oversees all the states in which you have a chapter of your Klan. That's the national leader. We call our national leader in this country the president. He oversees all 50 states, right? The state leader, which we call governor, who oversees just their individual state. Now, the Klan calls their national leader, what we call president, they call that person the imperial wizard. So anybody who is on the imperial level means that person is a national officer. Wizard is the top, like president. And then you have imperial caliph, which would be like a vice president. And then you have secretary, treasurer, on down. Okay, and then you get to the state level. So we call the state leader the governor. All right. In Klan terminology, a state leader is known as the Grand Dragon. He oversees the state in which he has his Klan group. All right, all the chapters in that state. A grand caliph would be like a lieutenant governor, second in command for the state. And then you have secretary, treasurer, etc. Within the state, you have counties. And we call the county leader the county executive or the county manager. It depends on what state you're in. All right. They call that person the great titan. Anybody on the great level is county level officer. Grand level is state level. Imperial is national level. Within the county, you have districts. Here in this country, we call those people council members, selectmen, aldermen, people like that, mayors. They call those people exalted cyclops. And below the exalted cyclops are just plain, regular Klansmen and Klanswomen. So that's the hierarchy. But now, there is no more Ku Klux Klan because it's splintered off of the original. So you have all these different Klan groups all over the country. They're autonomous. They use the same bylaws, the same colors on their robes, the same secret passwords, basically the same thing, but they are separate. It's no longer centralized. So each Klan group has an imperial wizard, a grand dragon, and so forth. And you can even have several different Klan groups in the same state. They're rivals with each other because you have two imperial wizards saying, we're the real Klan, you're a wannabe Klan, that kind of thing.
How many chapters is there, and how many people at the height of the Ku Klux Klan, how many members did they have?
At the height of the Ku Klux Klan, this would be in the 1920s into the early 1930s, they estimated between 4 million and 6 million. with Indiana being the largest centralized population of Klan members.
I don't really know the population of America back then, but I think it was just over 100 million. I think the 1920s and 30s, you're talking, what, 4%? And then it would be easy. The more people they can brainwash, the bigger they become. Slavery, how did slavery start? Like, what's your opinion on slavery? Because people talk about it coming from, like, the Egyptians and, like, where does slavery stem from?
Slavery started with European countries, the Dutch, and even others, going to Africa, taking those people and forcing them into this country. They did not come here on a cruise ship. They were stacked on top of each other, okay? And they were chained. Their wrists, their legs were shackled. And they were brought here and they were sold. And then the people who bought them would sell them on the courthouse steps. The court is a place in this country, as it is in any country, where you are supposed to dispense equal justice for people, right? But this country sold slaves on the courthouse steps. I think I want that boy right there. I want that girl right there. I'll give you $50 for that one. I'll give you $100 for that one. Okay, sold. They were just like, look at it like this. Did you ever have a kitten or a puppy when you were a boy, right? Your parents took you because somebody's dog had puppies. Somebody's cat had kittens. So they take you over to the house and there's a whole box full of them, brand new, just got born the other day. And they say, pick one. And you take one. You are separating that dog or that cat from its mother, from its parents. That's what these people were doing. Dividing up families and selling them to different plantations. And they would never meet again. All right? They worked for free. These were not indentured servants. These were slaves. So now, did other countries have slavery? Sure. Yes, Egypt had some. Other places had some. But that does not justify any slavery whatsoever. And that's the mistake that a lot of people will try to excuse it by saying, well, Egypt had slaves. America, didn't start slavery. Well, perhaps you remember when you were a kid, and if you have kids, perhaps you told your kids this. When you were a little boy and you were playing with your friends, and they did something stupid that little Johnny should not have done, and you did it also, and the teacher called your parents and said, your son was throwing rocks or doing something he shouldn't be doing, and I want you to know about this. So now your parents are going to punish you, and they ask why were you doing this? And you said, well, little Johnny was doing it too. And they said, well, if little Johnny went and jumped off a cliff, you're going to go jump off the cliff? It makes you think, well, no, I'm not going to jump off the cliff. But that is an excuse to justify why America had slaves. Well, these African countries did it. These Egyptians did it. It goes back to biblical times. There is nothing biblical about having a slave. It is wrong.
Who brought the slaves from Africa? Was it white or black people?
It was white people who brought the slaves here.
Because people's arguments you'll see online, it was black people who sold the slaves.
No. So, that is how they try to justify it. Okay, so if and let's just say hypothetically that black people sold these people, does that justify you doing it? If I sell you a gun, does that justify you going and shooting somebody? No. So they make all kinds of excuses to excuse their sin, their guilt. All right? No. They went there, they kidnapped a lot of people, perhaps some got sold, but that does not justify it. And they put them on these boats, and it wasn't black people bringing them over here. It was white people who brought them over here. And then later, of course, they would colonize, different parts of this country and even different countries in Africa.
What were they doing with the slaves?
Here,
Yeah. How bad was it?
it was very bad. They were working in cotton fields, picking cotton, tobacco. When you hear the term old money, have you ever heard that term before?
Yeah.
Oh, she comes from old money, or he comes from old money. That means the money off the backs of slaves, because these people who are, textiles, cotton, tobacco, are big products, big commodities, and you're getting all this stuff picked and sorted and you sell it for money. Who's doing the work? The slaves. They're not getting paid. So you're getting all this free labor and making you rich. That's the old money. Today in this country, new money is like Silicon Valley, with computer chips and all this other kind of thing, AI now and all that kind of thing. That's new money. But when someone says old money is slavery, and that's why the Civil War was fought. If you go to school in this country, in the North, in high school, they teach you in American history the Civil War was fought over slavery. And yes, that is correct. But if you go to school in the South, they teach you, no. The Civil War was fought over states' rights. Yes, that is true. The state's right to own a slave. That's how they frame it. It's the same thing.
What would happen if a slave tried to escape?
He would be killed. He or she would be killed.
And there's no charge of murder?
No, because it says, even in our Constitution, that slaves were 3/5 of a human being. Black people are 3/5 of a human being. Okay, we were property. We were property. So there's no use for that. If your dog becomes rabid and someone shoots it, they're getting rid of it because they don't figure that the dog is becoming any more good. This is a piece of property. It's not a human being. That was the mentality, and that's the mentality that you have to have in order to do things that would dehumanize somebody else. You don't want to dehumanize yourself, because if you're white and you kill a white man, you've committed murder. You have dehumanized yourself and dehumanized that person. That person's like you. But if you consider that person to be low life, to be a wild animal, to not even be human, just be a piece of property, then you save yourself the dehumanization by killing that person if you have to. It doesn't matter. And no white man ever got arrested for killing a black man back in the day. That was the way it was in this country.
See, when you were reading about the Ku Klux Klan and the neo-Nazis, were you getting angry, or were you trying to understand them, or could you look at the bigger picture and, like you says, your surroundings and the people you are around? It makes you see the world from their lens because you're a product of your environment. Like, how were you seeing it back then when you were trying to understand these people who hated black people?
Okay, so that's a very good question. And like I pointed out in my upbringing, I had an upbringing that the majority of Americans do not have, black or white. Most Americans do not travel. Like European people, they travel all the time. They're always going somewhere. Over here we say we go on vacation. We have a 2-week vacation. In Europe, they don't call it vacation. They say I'm going on holiday, and the holiday may be 2 months. And they're always going somewhere. They're seeing different things. They're learning things. They are a lot more worldly than we are here in this country. In this country, Americans do not travel. The majority of them do not travel. And according to our U.S. Census Bureau, less than 40% of U.S. citizens own a passport, which means they don't go out of the country. Very few go very far from where they live, So the upbringing that I had, where I was beginning to travel as at the age of 3, and today I'm an adult, right? I travel, I perform all over the world as a musician. I speak all over the world. I've performed and spoken in all 50 states here in this country. When you combine my childhood travels with my adulthood travels, you put them together, I have now been to 65 countries on 6 continents. I'm behind. Currently, there are 195 countries in the world. A couple years ago, I met 2 people within 3 weeks of each other that didn't even know each other. One guy from Estonia. He had been to 161 countries. I met another guy from California, an American, surprise. He had been to 125 countries. So I'm behind at 65 countries. But like I said, most Americans do not travel. Now, all of that travel that I've done, I've been exposed to a wide variety of people. People who don't look like me, people who don't speak my language, people who don't worship like I do. Some of them don't even worship at all. But I can tell you that no matter how far I've gone from my country, the United States, whether I've gone right next door to Canada or right next door to Mexico or all the way to the other side of the planet, across the Atlantic, across the Pacific, I can tell you that every single person I've met is a human being. And as such, every human being, regardless of what they look like, who they worship or don't worship, every human being wants these 5 core values in their lives. Everybody wants to be loved. Everybody wants to be respected. We all want to be heard. We want to be treated fairly and truthfully. And we want the same things for our family as anybody else would want for their family. And if we can learn to apply those 5 core values or any of those 5 values when we find ourselves in a contentious or adversarial situation or culture or society in which we are uncomfortable or unfamiliar, I'll guarantee you that your navigation of that situation, that culture, that society will be much more positive, much more productive, and much more smooth. Now, all that travel does not make me a better human being than somebody with less travel. But what it does is it gives me a better and broader sense of humanity than people who have not experienced that. All they can do is speculate what that person is like. I have experienced that person, so I can tell you what they're like. And your speculation may or may not be correct. And usually it's not correct because you've not interacted with that person.
What made you want to go to a KKK rally?
Because my books did not answer the question of how somebody could hate me when they didn't know me. They talked about racism and supremacy, but they didn't tell me why. And when I would ask people who were older than me, why are people like that? Why don't these German Nazis like the Jewish people? Why don't these people like the black people? Why are people this way or that way, right? They would say, oh, Daryl, some people are just like that. That's just the way it is. Well, that's not an answer. I need to know why. Now,
Sorry, I'm going to cut. Why did you care so much? Because there's evil in all walks of life. There's bad in all walks of life, all religions, all skin colors, all genders. There's evil.
Yeah.
There's extremists, racists, pedophiles in the same category I've just mentioned. Why did you care so much that what other people thought?
Because it was wrong, number one.
Of course.
And number two, that how is it that I got treated better in other countries all over the world than I was being treated in my own country? Something's wrong there, okay? And here's a difference here that I think your listeners, your audience, or viewers would need to understand. Here in this country, we speculate on other people that we don't know. All right. So, for example, if you're black and you've been discriminated against by white people here in your own country, your fellow Americans, right? This white person does this to you. It's not a far stretch to think, well, no, I don't want to go to Germany. I don't want to go to France. I don't want to go to Scotland. Too many white people there. They'll treat me badly. They are casting that aspersion on somebody they don't even know, because not all white people are like that. But if that's your experience, all right, same thing with white people. If they viewed blacks as less than a human being, and we're ignorant, we're unintelligent, We're whatever they want to call us, and they owned us as slaves. That mentality pervades to Africa, to any place else that has darker colored skin, because they think all people are alike. They paint with a broad brush. So as a young child, I was around people who looked like the people who treated me bad, throwing rocks and bottles at me. But these people who looked like those people treated me very nice. So that caused a cognitive dissonance. So that raised my curiosity. Well, hold on. It's not every white person. Why do these people think that way in my country, and these people over here who don't look like, who look like those people, think totally opposite? So that's what I'm trying to find out.
So that's why you wanted to go to a rally. Like, how does a black man get into one of these rallies? Did you have to dress up, or how did it work?
I got to wear my suit and tie. No, okay. So there are two kinds of Klan rallies, Ku Klux Klan rallies, right? You have ones that are public, and you have ones that are private. Okay, a public rally is when, let's say, you want to have your rally at a park over there on Main Street. Well, you have to go to City Hall, right, and apply for a permit to occupy the city space. Hey, and you fill out this application. I want to gather people of a like mind. Because we have freedom of assembly in this country and in our Constitution. We also have freedom of speech, right? So I want to address my people of a like mind. I want to occupy this public park between the hours of 12 noon and 4 p.m. on May 22nd. So sounds good. Okay, sign the paper, fill it out. It gets approved, and you have your rally. Because it's on public property, anybody can go. You can go. I can go. All right, it's public property. Now, if there is going to be some contention, some protests and people want to get violent, there's going to be a barrier of law enforcement between the group occupying the park and the protesters. You won't be able to get to them. All right. You can yell and scream and hold signs and all that, but you won't be able to physically assault them.
Was people doing that?
Sure. They try. You see it all the time. Look at what's going on in Minneapolis right now. Look what went on in Minneapolis when George Floyd was murdered. So yes, people, they're angry. They don't like to be discriminated against, or be abused by law enforcement or whatever the case may be. So those people, the people that are putting out the hate in this country, you have the right to hate. You don't have the right to physically hurt. All right. So you can hate all you want, but you put your hands on somebody and try to hurt them, then you've crossed the line. Now, back then, that line was very blurred. It's less, I won't say it's unblurred today. It's still blurred, but not as blurred. All right. As it was back then. You could put your hand on a slave and kill him. It didn't matter. All right. So that's a public rally. If there's going to be no protests, some rural area where everybody supports that kind of ideology, you can walk right up to the people and talk to them. All right, so that's public rally. A private rally, you must be invited by a higher up in the Klan, like a Grand Dragon or Imperial Wizard, because the private rally is held on private property. Perhaps one of the Klansmen or Klanswomen, they own a farm or they own a lot of acres. And so you say, hey, we'll have the rally on my property. Well, you just can't walk on somebody else's property. That's trespassing. So you must have permission to be there. So I've been to both because I was, interviewing and researching and writing a book about these people. I'd made, some connections. And I said, hey, I'd like to come to a rally. So, I would get the invite.
What happened when you went? What did you see? Did you realize how bad it was, obviously, with your research? Or
I knew how bad it was before I got there. I've been to many, but and then there's some, that would not let me come. But there's a lot of hate, a whole lot of hate
from both sides.
What do you mean both sides?
People who are shouting hatred as well.
Well, in the private rally, there are no protesters. You can't get in.
Mm-hmm.
At the public rally, yes. Okay, so but in both cases, there's a lot of hate. being promulgated by the haters in the Klan or what have you. And so I'm standing there watching them proclaim white power and all this and using racial epithets, and then they light this big cross on fire, and it's surreal. It's it's really surreal. Um, it's I feel all kinds of different feelings happen at the same time. It's hard to describe. In some regard, you may feel anger, and then in the next moment, you may feel sadness. You're sad because these people have no idea what they're doing.
What is the burning of the cross? What does that mean?
Okay. There are two occasions upon which, as they say, we put the cross aflame. One is called a cross burning, and one is called a cross lighting. All right, a cross burning is when they come in the middle of the night and they stick a 5 or 10 foot cross in your yard and put it on fire. That is meant as intimidation. That's a threat. It's a warning. You only get one warning. We know who you are. We don't like what you're doing. Cease and desist, move out, or the next time we come, we mean business. So it could mean we're going to bomb your house, burn it down, hurt you, whatever. The cross burning is your one and only warning. It is a threat. All right. A cross lighting is when they have a rally, and they have, the cross burning is usually like a 5 or 10 foot cross. A cross lighting is on the Klan property. It could be like a 20 or 30 foot cross. And in both occasions, the cross is wrapped in burlap, and the burlap is soaked in what they call Klan cologne, which is actually diesel fuel or kerosene. They wrap it up, it's soaked, and then they parade around it and yell white power and all that stuff. And then the leader, whoever's there, the Imperial Wizard or Grand Dragon, will say, "Klansmen, halt!" And they all stop in place. And they're all holding these torches. "Klansmen, turn and face the cross." So they turn inward. The cross is in the center, and there's a big wide circle of them that march around clockwise around this cross with their torches. And then he says, turn and face the cross. They all turn and face the cross. Then he'll say, "For my God," and they all repeat, "For my God, for my country, for my country, for my race, white power, white power." Approach the cross. They all close in with their torches. "Klansmen, light the cross." And they throw their torches down at the base of the cross, and whoosh, the thing catches fire and goes up. And it's now the reason why they use fire on the cross is because they consider themselves to be a Christian organization. Now, keep in mind, it's not the Christian that I know. All right, it's false Christianity. They use the cross for that purpose to symbolize Christianity. The fire is symbolic. They use the fire symbolically because fire is a purifier. If you want to purify something, you burn it. You heat it up or whatever. So they use the fire to symbolize the purity of the white race. So that's why they put the fire on the cross.
What are you thinking after you've seen this for the first time? Like, did you decide, okay, I'm going to dedicate my life to this to understand it and try and speak to these people? Like, what was your method of thinking after you'd seen this?
Well, I'd already spoken to many of them when I saw it, but like I said, I felt a lot of different things at the same time. I felt anger. I felt violent. I felt bitter. I felt sadness, because these people, they don't understand. They have no clue. It's rooted in ignorance. All right. They're not born that way. They acquired that from somewhere. So, how do they come to this point in their lives? Some of them are very good people, but they just have a twisted mentality. They're good to their kids. They work hard. They do their job. Others, can be just like anybody else. You have criminals. You have good people in all walks of life. But something has brainwashed them. Well, it's a cult. So, what led them down that path? So that's what I want to talk to them about. Find out. I never set out to convert anybody. When you see my name in the media, it will say, black musician converts 200 white supremacists, or KKK members, whatever. No, I did not convert 200. I didn't even convert one. But I am the impetus for over 200 white supremacists to renounce that ideology and give up their robes and hoods and swastika flags and all that. I was the one who inspired them to do that. And that came through conversation. I have a lot of those robes and hoods and swastika flags and all that kind of thing that they gave me, because now they no longer believe in that, based upon conversations from us. They've learned something. They've seen something that they never knew. So now, why does somebody join the Klan? Everybody thinks, they're third grade dropouts, they're unintelligent, and everybody joined because their daddy was in the Klan. That's the stereotypical thinking, all right? But no, a white supremacist is not stamped from a standard cookie cutter. They come from all different walks of life. Yes, you do have the third grade dropout who didn't finish school and has, no sense of history or no sense of anything. But you also have the Klansmen who went all the way to the White House and became president of the United States. All right. President Warren G. Harding was sworn into the Ku Klux Klan in the green room of the White House. President Harry Truman joined the Klan for a very short time. He didn't like it. He got out and he went on to become president. So we've had governors, we've had senators, people who are college graduates. So it's not just, somebody who had no education. All right. Now another thing could be, my grandfather was in the Klan, my daddy was in the Klan, and I'm in the Klan, and my kids are going to be in the Klan. So it could be a family tradition passed down. Like, my grandfather was a Mason, I'm a Mason, and my kids are going to be Masons. Whatever. Family tradition. That's one way. Another way is also you move into a town that's very clannish, if you will. And I don't say let me pause for a second, because since you're Scottish, you'll understand this. The word clan is a Scottish word, Scottish Irish word, meaning family or close circle of friends, close friends, a clan. Like I would belong to the Davis clan, right? You would belong to the English clan, and you have a crest and so forth and so on. So the Ku Klux Klan, as I said, they descended from members of the Scottish Rite, the Masons. Now that's not to say that all Masons are Klan, because they're not. The Masons are a very benevolent society. Have they had racism in their Masonry? Yes, they have. In this country especially, because we've had white Mason lodges and black Mason lodges. Now today, a lot of them belong to the same, but there was a division back in the day. But anyway, the Ku Klux Klan considers themselves to be a fraternity. So, as you know, the fraternities began with the Greeks, Alpha Phi Alpha, Kappa Beta, whatever. So they took the word kuklos, which means circle in Greek, and they took the word clan from the Irish Scottish, lingo, which means family. So circle and family. So it means circle of families, circle of close friends, Ku Klux Klan. And Ku Klux was spelled Kuklos. Well, these Klansmen couldn't spell, and they misspelled it, and they put Kuklux. And they took the word clan, Clan, and they changed the C intentionally to a K for uniformity, KKK. So it means circle of family, circle of friends.
What was it like when you started speaking to them?
Okay, so when you are at a Klan rally, all right, if you are invited there by the higher up, because it's kind of like a paramilitary chain of command, all right, even if the members don't like you there, they don't like you, they hate you, they cannot do anything to you, because if they do, they will be punished by the higher up. If the higher up invited you, then you're okay, hands off of him. All right. We don't have to like him, but he's here. And I invited him for a reason. All right. So, you don't have to talk to me if you don't want. Don't talk to him if you don't want to talk to him, but don't attack him. All right. Now, if you just show up at a public rally, they may cuss you out, they may do, whatever. But there's a chain of command. And some people would talk to me, some people wouldn't talk to me. I've had my share of physical violence as well. People have tried to attack me, and of course, I'm going to defend myself, So that's where the title came from. Ku Klux Klan. It's part Greek, part Scottish.
But meeting them for the first time, how did you get in contact with the Clan Dragon? What's that story?
Okay. So they're not hard to find. And this is before, the internet, before websites and things like that. The first Klansman that I met, I beat him up. Not because he was a Klansman. I didn't even know he was a Klansman. I had finished a music gig late at night, and there is about 45 minutes from here. There was an all-night restaurant. It was open all night. Is a big mechanic bay and gas station where truckers come, because it's right off the highway. So truckers come and they get gas and they get their trucks fixed and they eat there. And there's a motel at the other end of the parking lot where they might spend the night. All right. So all 24-hour restaurant. So I'm coming from a gig. I'm pulling into the restaurant parking lot, and I see a man sitting on a woman is lying on her back on the sidewalk. This man is sitting on her chest, and he's banging her head into the sidewalk and hitting her in the face. And there are 3 or 4 other men. These are all white people. The woman, the man on top of her, and the 3 or 4 other men, all white people, standing there watching this from just a few feet away. Nobody's calling the police. They're watching this man beat the crap out of this lady, right? I see it as I'm pulling in to my space. They're over there, I'm over here. And I'm going to get out of the car. I'm going to go over there. I'm going to yank this guy off of her, right? As soon as I got out of he was totally oblivious to anything around him. He was just into whatever he was doing with this woman. And when I got out of the car and I slammed my car door, he jumped up and looked, and he saw me, and I'm looking at him. I'm going to come over there, and he goes, what the fuck you looking at, nigger? And I said, I'm looking at you. And he says, you want a piece of me? I said, yeah. He got up off of her. He came at me, and I beat the daylights out of him. Then one of those 3 or 4 guys went into the restaurant and got on the payphone and called the police. Because there were no cell phones back then. All right. So they're going to stand there and watch this man beat the crap out of a woman, not call the police. But then when a black man beats the crap out of the guy, they go call the police. Right. So now so these 2 cops show up, 2 county cops. And something was odd. I couldn't put my finger on it at the time. So they both, one of them says to me, you stand over here, we'll be with you in a moment. Now, he should have talked to me. And the other one talked to the other guy. And then they compare notes, right? But one leads me over here and says, you wait right here, I'll be with you in a moment. He goes back and joins his fellow cop, and they both are talking to this guy. Something was very strange. And I wanted the guy arrested. They would not arrest him. But they have to give me his information by law. So they gave me his name and address and all that kind of stuff off his ID. And they told him that he had to leave the property immediately. If he came back on the property within 24 hours, they would arrest him for trespassing, because they gave him a legal order to leave and not return for at least 24 hours. So he left, right? And I said, how come you didn't arrest him? And I didn't get hurt. He got hurt. But they said, well, we weren't here. We didn't see what happened. I said, I told you what happened. I said, there were witnesses here. People saw what happened. Oh, well, we didn't see that. Like I said, something was very odd, right? So I went on inside the restaurant. I got the people to give me a towel with some ice in it. I got the lady, I put it on her head, and she's bloody all over. And I said, listen, if I'm going to give you my phone number. If you want me to come, if you want to take this guy to court, charge him. I said, I will come as your witness. She said, that would be great. She said, if you want to go to court, I'll be your witness too. I said, okay. I mean, I didn't get hurt, but why not? Charge him with assault, right? So she said, okay. So we exchanged phone numbers. And then I said, you know what? I was going there to eat, but I want to get this guy arrested. So rather than go in and eat, I went down the street to the police station. And I told the commissioner what happened. I said, I want a warrant for this man's arrest. So I had to fill out this warrant. And is a big, in his office, is a big window that faces out into the lobby where people come in. I'm sitting in his office. And I said, how long will it take for him to be served with this warrant? He says, well, when you finish it, you give it to me. I'll send it down to the sheriff's office. One of the deputies goes out and serves him 2-3 days at most. I said, okay. So I'm finishing it up. And then in walks the guy that I beat up. He's handcuffed behind his back. And on this side is a Maryland State Trooper. On this side is another Maryland State Trooper. They have him on both arms, right? And they're walking him in because there's a jail in there too, holding cell. And I said, that's him right there. That's him right there. I'm pointing out the big window. And the commissioner says, sign the warrant. I'll serve him right now. I signed it. The guy walks out there and serves the guy, right? Now, here's the difference between county police and state police. The county police will play. They'll play games. State police, they don't play. They do not play at all. So, long story short, what had happened was the county police, let the guy go, right? And then they left. Well, after the cops left, the guy came back to the restaurant looking for me. He wanted to settle the score, right? I wasn't there. I'm down here at the commissioner's office. He goes inside and starts a fight with some other black guy. He's just angry, right? And so somebody called the cops. The state police were riding around in the area, and they responded first. So they arrested the guy and brought him in. Now, the day comes to go to court. I go down to the lady's house. I pick her up, and it's about maybe 50-minute ride from where she lives to this courthouse. She tells me the story. She was his ex-fiance, the guy who was beating her up. She was his ex-fiance. She broke up with him because he was seeing somebody else and got this somebody else pregnant. So she broke up, right? He did not want to let her go. And then she tells me that he is a lieutenant in the county fire department. Well, that answered the whole question. What was odd? These are county police. County police know county firemen. They go to the same scenes, right? And so they knew each other. That's why the cops let him go. The state police, they don't know the county firefighters. They know the state people. So they don't care. They arrest him. And so anyway, we went to court. He was found guilty and all that, and he was sentenced to weekends in jail. He was a fireman, a lieutenant in the fire force, and she told me that he was in the Klan, in the KKK. Now I didn't know that at the time, but that would not have changed my mind, even if I did know it before I beat him up. It didn't matter to me, right? But what happened? But those were his buddies standing there watching him beat her up. And then when he got beat up, they didn't want to touch me. So they figured, well, if they mess with me, they get beat up too. They go call the police.
Were they all in the Klan, the state?
The other people, I don't know if they were in the Klan or not, but they were his friends. They knew him. She said that. She said that he was in the Klan.
How did you get the meeting with the Grand Dragon?
Not too far from there was a nightclub. It was an all-white nightclub. When I say all-white, I do not mean that black people could not go in, but it had a reputation that black people were not welcome to go there. So most black people did not go there. If you go somewhere where you're not welcome and alcohol is being served, it's not always a good combination. So this band that I had joined was an all-white band. They had played there. They were well established here in Maryland. They had played there before. I knew the place. I'd never been there. I'd driven by it. But now I'm in the band, and they have another gig there. So I'm going to go. So I went there, and people looked at me when I came in, but they didn't bother me. And we played our first set. We took a break, and I'm following the band to go sit down at the band table on break. And I feel somebody behind me put their arm across my shoulder. And now I don't know anybody in this place. And I see the whole band in front of me. So I'm turning around thinking, uh-oh, it's going to hit the fan here. And I see this white guy. He's older than me. And he's smiling. And he says, "Man, I sure love your all's music." I said, "Thank you." And I shook his hand. I said, "I appreciate that." And he points at the stage. And he says, "I've seen this here band before. I ain't never seen you before. Where did you come from?" I said, "Well, I just joined the band a couple months ago. It's my first time here. But yeah, you've probably seen them, before because they played here before." He goes, "Man, I sure love your piano playing. This is the first time I ever heard a black man play piano like Jerry Lee Lewis." And to me, that was not offensive. I love Jerry Lee Lewis. He's a friend of mine. He's dead now, but he was a friend of mine. And so, I took it complimentary, but I realized this guy was ignorant. And I said to him, "Well, where do you think Jerry Lee Lewis learned how to play?" He says, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Jerry Lee Lewis learned that style from black, blues, and boogie-woogie piano players. That's where that rock and roll, rockabilly style comes from." "Oh, no. I ain't never heard no black man play like that except for you." I'm thinking, okay, well, this guy never saw or heard Fats Domino or Little Richard, same boogie style. And I said, "Look, man, I know Jerry Lee Lewis. Jerry Lee's a good friend of mine. He's told me himself where his influences came. He didn't believe I knew Jerry Lee. He didn't believe Jerry Lee knew anything from black people. But he was fascinated with me and insisted that I come back to his table. He wanted to buy me a drink. Now, I don't drink alcohol. I never did. But I said, okay, I'll come back to his table. I asked for a cranberry juice. He pays the waitress. She brings the cranberry juice. He takes his glass and he clinks my glass and cheers me and says, "This is the first time I ever sat down and had a drink with a black man." And now I'm sitting here like, what the heck is wrong with this guy, man? Because at this point in my life, I had sat down and had a drink, a meal, a conversation with thousands, tens of thousands of white people. How is it that this guy, who is a decade and a half, perhaps 2 decades older than me, he never sat down with a black guy in his life? Come on. I innocently asked him why. And he looked at me. They looked down at the table, and he didn't say anything. And I asked him again. And he had a friend sitting next to him. His friend said, tell him. I said, "Tell me." He goes, "I'm a member of the Ku Klux Klan." Well, I started laughing because I didn't believe him. I didn't believe him for several reasons. One, I have every book written on the Ku Klux Klan, and none of them talk about how a Klansman will come up and embrace a black guy and want to buy him a drink and hang out. It doesn't work that way. So that's number one. Number two, I already had an experience with a Klansman who I had to beat up. And if this guy was a Klansman, that guy was a real Klansman. I don't know what this guy was. So I thought he was joking, because they don't act like that. At least not from my experience, right? My one experience with the guy. So I'm laughing, thinking he's joking. And he went inside his pocket, pulled out his wallet, flipped through it, and he handed me his Klan membership card. And I recognized the Klan emblem, which is a red circle with a white cross and a red blood drop in the center of the cross. I stopped laughing. This card was for real. And I gave it back to him. And we talked about the Klan and some different things, but he gave me his phone number. And he wanted me to call him whenever I was to return to this bar. It was called the Silver Dollar Lounge, because he wanted to come. And he wanted to bring his friends, meaning Klansmen and Klanswomen, to see, as he told me, the black guy who plays like Jerry Lee Lewis. I don't know that he called me the black guy to his friends, but that's how he told me, right? And so I'd call him every 6 weeks, whenever the band leader told me, hey, we got a gig coming up here, the Silver Dollar Lounge, blah, blah, blah. I said, okay, man, hey, we're going to be at the Silver Dollar Lounge. I'd call him on a Wednesday or a Thursday, and say, hey, man, we're going to be there. He'd come out on the weekend. He'd bring his friends, Klansmen and Klanswomen. They came in, regular clothing, not robes and hoods. And they would, stand near the stage and watch me play, and then they'd get out and dance. And on the breaks, I'd make my way through the audience over to his table, say hello, thank him for coming. Some of those people, the Klan, they were curious. They would stay there and they want to meet me and talk to me. And then there were two of them who would get up. When they saw me coming in that direction, they'd get up and they'd walk to the other side of the room. So the implication was, we don't want to shake your hand. We don't want to talk to you. We just want to look at you. Okay, fine. Just don't, attack me or anything like that. So, that went on for a while. And then I quit that band at the end of that year. And I went back to playing, different styles of music. And then it dawned on me just a few years later, Daryl, you blew it. The answer to your question that's been plaguing you since the age of 10, how can you hate me when you don't even know me? It fell right into your lap. You didn't realize it. Who better to ask that question of than somebody in the KKK? They should know why they hate, so they should be able to tell you, right? So I decided I would get back in contact with that Klansman, because I'd not seen him since I quit. I had no reason to go hang out with the Klan, right? So I only saw him when I played there, because I called him and tell him I'm going to be there. He'd come. So now I had a reason to get back in contact with this guy. Long story short, I decided I'm going to write a book. And because, this Klansman was very nice to me. Yes, he was ignorant. Yes, he was hateful, but he was very nice to me. The other Klansman was completely hated me and wanted to destroy me, tried to attack me. I saw what he did to this woman. He's going to try to do the same thing to me. So you have two people in the same organization, but two totally different personalities. So I decided I want to write a book. I want to travel around the country. I'll start here in Maryland, where I live, and interview Klan leaders and members and find out the answer to my question. How can you hate me? Because they should know. So I got back in contact with him, and I asked him if he would introduce me to the Grand Dragon from Maryland. And he did not want to do it. He liked me, but he was afraid. He was afraid if he took me, a black man, to the Grand Dragon, he would be in trouble and I would be in trouble. So he was very concerned. So he wouldn't do it, and I persuaded him to give me. I knew who the Grand Dragon was. I knew his name. I never met him. I see his picture in the newspaper. I see him on TV or whatever, being interviewed. And so I persuaded him to give me the Grand Dragon's phone number and his address. He gave it to me on the condition that I not tell the Grand Dragon where I got this information. And he warned me. He said, Daryl, do not fool with Roger Kelly. Roger Kelly will kill you. I said, well, that's why I need to see him. Why would he kill me? This is what I want to understand. So that's how that started. And I had my secretary contact Mr. Kelly and set up an interview with. Well, first ask him, would he consent to doing an interview? And I told her, do not tell him that I'm black. He'll find that out if he agrees when he sees me, right? So she understood, and she called him, and he didn't ask what color I was. He said, yeah, he would do the interview. And so, of course, he was shocked when he showed up, and here I am, right?
Why did he not walk out?
Huh?
Why did he not walk out when he seen you?
I think he was curious. He was curious, just like I was curious, But at first, he invited us to his house, not knowing that I was black. And something came up that particular day. We had to call and reschedule. I said, Mary was my secretary. I said, when you reschedule, just say, let's meet at a motel. Just keep it neutral.
Safer?
Yeah. And so we did that, and it was the motel above the Silver Dollar Lounge, the motel up there, because the lounge is in the basement. And the lounge is still there, but it's closed. It's not operating anymore. Somebody got murdered there a few years ago, so they shut it down. But the motel is still there. So we got a room. Mary and I went there early and got a room. And I gave her some money and sent her down the hall to get soda pop out of the vending machine, put it in the ice bucket, fill it with ice, get it cold. I had no idea what this man was going to do when he saw me. Would he Would he say, look at me and say, I'm not talking to you, and walk away, as you pointed out? Would he try to attack me like the other idiot? Or would he come in the room and do the interview like he told Mary he would do? I had no idea. All I knew in my head was what the guy told me, one of his former members, Daryl, do not fool with Roger Kelly. He will kill you. Okay. By the way, that the guy, the Klansman at the one that I met who was friendly, bought me the drink. Okay. He was full-bred Klansman when I met him. All right. But we kept seeing each other time and time again whenever I'd play there. By the time this happened, he was out of the Klan. I didn't know he had quit.
Because of you?
Partially because of me, but he did not quit the Klan. He got kicked out. He got kicked out by the Grand Dragon. Okay, so anyway, he had done something stupid. So I had no idea what this man was going to do. All I knew was the guy told me not to fool with him because he would kill me. So it was a chance I had to take. And I had, so I came to the motel room. I had this little black bag that was sitting by the foot of my chair, the leg of my chair. And I had a cassette recorder and some blank cassettes. I put the recorder on the table. It was a small lamp table, like the one right there. Because it's a motel. No big conference table, just something like that. I took the lamp off. I put a chair on one side for Mr. Kelly, a chair on this side for me. And I had my bag here. I took my cassette recorder out, put it in the middle of the table. I had no idea. Is this man going to come in the room? Would he let me record if he does come in the room? But I'm gonna be prepared. All right. And I have my cans of soda in the ice bucket over here on the dresser. I'm going to offer him a cold beverage. I don't care who he is. I'm going to treat him hospitably, right? And also, I had a copy of the Bible in my bag because the Ku Klux Klan, as I explained, says that they are a Christian organization, and they say that the Bible preaches racial separation. Now, I've read the Bible, so I want to be able to hear, Mr. Kelly, please show me the chapter and verse where it says blacks and whites must be separate. So I'm all prepared, right? Right on time. Mary gets up and goes around the corner, opens the door. Now, if you're standing in the hallway looking into the room, you cannot see who's in the room. You have to come in the room, go to this way around the wall, and then the room is back here. So until you're halfway in the room, you have no idea who's in the hallway or who's in the room. So I'm sitting there at the table. I'm in the most obscure corner of the room. I put the table there intentionally. And Mary opens the door. In walks what is known as the Grand Nighthawk. Nighthawk in Klan terminology means bodyguard, security. So a Grand Nighthawk is the bodyguard for the Grand Dragon. An Imperial Nighthawk is the bodyguard for the Imperial Wizard. So this Grand Nighthawk comes walking in. He's wearing military camouflage, the Ku Klux Klan patch here, the red circle, white cross, blood drop. Over here are the letters KKK, right? And he has a semi-automatic handgun in a holster right here. He comes around the corner, and he sees me and just freezes right in place, like that. Mr. Kelly is on the other side of the corner. He's not come around yet because he's behind. And he comes around the corner, and the Nighthawk is standing right there. So he's, boom, hits the guy in the back and knocks the guy forward. And now they're stumbling around, both of them, like looking around the room, trying to regain their balance. And I'm just sitting there like, looking at them. And I could read their faces. I knew what they were thinking. They were thinking, did the desk clerk give us the wrong room number, or is this an ambush? So I stood up and I went like this to show I had nothing in my hands. And I walked forward. I put my hand out and said, "Hi, Mr. Kelly. I'm Daryl Davis." He shook my hand. So far, so good. The Nighthawk shook my hand. They both come in. I said, "Please have a seat." Mr. Kelly sat down. The Nighthawk stood at attention on his right side. And before I could sit down, Mr. Kelly asked me for identification. I gave him identification, right? So then we get into this interview. And every time my cassette would run out of tape, I'd reach down to get a fresh cassette to change it. Or every time Mr. Kelly would say, "Well, Mr. Davis, the Bible says," whatever. If I did not agree, I'd reach down to get my Bible and say, "Please show me." Every time I reached like this, the Nighthawk reached like this, right? He never pulled his gun out, but he put his hand on the handle of the gun, right? So this went on for about 45 minutes. I would reach to the bag, he'd reach for the gun. And I understood that. That's his job. He's the bodyguard. I'm the enemy. He has no idea what's in my bag, right? So I understood that. But after about 45 minutes, the Nighthawk realized there was no threat in the bag, and he relaxed. I went in and out of the bag. He didn't move, right? A little over an hour into this interview, we're just talking like we are right now, except we're a lot closer about the distance of this table. And we're just, Mr. Kelly and I just talking, and out of nowhere, there was a very fast, very short noise. I got, and we all jumped because it had no context in our conversation. And I jumped up out of my chair, and I hit the table, right? And I knew in my mind that Mr. Kelly had made this noise. I did not know what the noise was because it was too fast and too short that my ear could not figure it out. But I knew that he made it. And because I was ignorant of not knowing what the noise was, I figured it to be an ominous, threatening noise. And all I could hear in my head was, Daryl, don't fool with Roger Kelly. He will kill you. So I was hearing that Klansman's voice. All right. So I had gone into what you call survival mode. When you fear for your life, you will do anything and everything to preserve your well-being. Some people, they faint, they pass out because the fear is so great their brain cannot process it and the brain shuts down and they fall out. I don't do that. Another thing people will do, their muscles will tense up and they'll constrict and they'll ball up like this and start shaking. You can be kicking them, punching them, whatever. They're not even trying to deflect. They're like this. That's called paralysis by fear, right? They lock up. And you see somebody in a fight and they curl into a little ball on the floor. That's paralysis by fear. I don't do that either. Another thing people will do is run away. That is the best option. As quickly as you can, separate yourself from the source of the fear. Get away from it. If you don't know what it is, get away from it. All right? That's the option that I would have taken if it had been available to me. How am I going to outrun a bullet in a motel room? I'm not armed. Mary is not armed. I see the Nighthawk's gun right here. All right? And I don't know if Mr. Kelly, he's wearing a suit and tie. I don't know if he has a gun up under his suit or not. All I know is I'm not armed, and I cannot outrun a bullet in this confined area. So your last option is to do a preemptive strike. You get them before they get you. So when I flew out of my chair, I'm getting ready to dive across that table, grab the Nighthawk, grab Mr. Kelly, and slam them down to the ground and take away the Nighthawk's gun. So that way I immobilize the situation, all right? So when I hit that table, I'm looking right into Mr. Kelly's eyes. I didn't say one word to him. I knew he could read my eyes. My eyes were speaking loud and clear, and they were saying to him, "What did you just do?" Well, his eyes were staring into my eyes. He didn't say a word either. I could read his eyes. His eyes were saying, "What did you just do?" And the bodyguard, the Nighthawk, had his hand back on his gun. He never pulled it out, had his hand right here. He's looking at both of us like, what did either one of y'all just do, right? So Mary is sitting to my left on top of the dresser because there were no more chairs in the room. She realized what had happened, and she began explaining it when it happened again. The soda pop in the ice bucket was next to her on her left. The ice had begun melting, and the cans of soda were falling down the ice. That was it, So somebody almost got shot over a melting ice cube. So, it was a lesson taught. I won't say that it was a lesson learned at that moment. The learning would come later. It was a lesson taught. The lesson taught is this: all because some foreign entity, that of which we were ignorant. Yes, we knew about the ice bucket and the cans of soda, but we'd long forgotten about it. We were so engrossed in conversation, we didn't even consider it, right? All because some foreign entity of which we were ignorant entered into our little comfort zone via the noise that it made, we became fearful and accusatory of each other, right? If you do not keep that fear, ignorance breeds fear. We feared that noise because we couldn't explain it. If you do not keep the fear in check, that fear will escalate into hatred because you hate the things that frighten you. If you don't keep the hatred in check, the hatred will escalate into destruction. You want to destroy those things that you hate. Why? Because they make you afraid. But guess what? They may have been harmless and you were simply ignorant. So we saw that whole chain almost unfold to completion. The destruction, had I jumped across the table and hurt one of them, or the guy pulled out his gun and shot me or shot my secretary, because it's his job to protect his boss, the Grand Dragon. It's my job to protect myself and my secretary, right? So fortunately, it stopped short of that, and we laughed and we carried on the conversation. So that was a teaching moment. And then I would bring I would invite Mr. Kelly to come down to my house. He'd sit right there where you are. The Nighthawk would sit next to him. Sometimes the Nighthawk got bored, right? He'd pull out his gun and twirl it like this on his finger while Mr. Kelly and I are talking, right, here at my house. And then after, if I was up in his county, I had to drop off a CD or a music contract, I'd call him and say, hey, man, what are you doing? If he said nothing, I said, look, come run this little errand with me. Okay, I'll meet you at, he always wanted to meet me somewhere in a parking lot, right? He didn't want me to come to his house. And so this went on for 2 years, right? The first year, every time he came down here to my house, he'd bring the Nighthawk. But after a year, he trusted me. He didn't bring the Nighthawk. He came by himself, right? But I still didn't go to his house. After 2 years of this, he got promoted from Grand Dragon, state leader of Maryland, to Imperial Wizard, national leader, right? He began inviting me to his house. I'd go to his house. I'd see his meeting room where he'd have his meetings. I'd take pictures. Then he invited me to Klan rallies. I'd go to these rallies. I'd been to other Klan rallies because I was traveling, and meeting other people. Some would talk to me. Some did not want to talk to me. So he became an Imperial Wizard. And over time, we became, very, very good friends. And I could see his mentality, the ideology dissipating as he began thinking. And he quit the Klan. And he gave me his robe and his hood. And he shut down the 13 states that he oversaw.
What's the most important thing? What's the most important message that you got from that first meeting with him? What's the one message that sticks out with you?
That the best approach is civil dialogue. It's this. When two enemies are talking, they're not fighting. They're talking. Maybe they're disagreeing. Maybe they're getting loud, but it's okay. They're still talking. It's when the conversation stops that the ground becomes fertile for violence. So you want to keep the conversation going. And that's number one. A couple other things. When you are talking with your adversary, let's say your worst enemy, a black man and a Klansman, all right? You're this far apart on the ideological spectrum. But if you talk to your opponent for 5 minutes, you're going to find something in common. And that gap narrows. Now you're here. You keep talking for another 5-10 minutes, you're going to find more in common. And now you're here because you have that much in common. Now, you are when you reach this point, you are in a cordial relationship with your adversary. Maybe you're not going out to dinner with him or going to his birthday party or whatever, but you're having a cordial relationship. You keep on talking, you found more in common. Now you're here. You're friendly. You all are being friendly. You don't agree on some things, but you're very friendly. When you reach this point, that has caused a cognitive dissonance in their mind because they have found more in common with you than they have contrast. And then the trivial things like skin color, or whether you go to a church, a synagogue, a mosque, or a temple, begin to matter less and less. And they began questioning themselves. How could I hate that person? He's just like me.
So see, when he was inviting you to the other rallies, were you actually in the private ones
Yes.
and nobody could touch you?
No.
And what was that when you were in? Was that not awkward for everyone?
Yeah, it was awkward for some of them. Got used to seeing me because I was always coming around. But yeah, it was awkward for some of them, and some of them got very angry with him for inviting me. They couldn't do anything, and some of them quit. And then he began getting hate mail. This is funny. He began getting hate mail anonymously, the same kind of hate mail that he would send out himself to people anonymously. He became the recipient of it.
What is their core beliefs, the Ku Klux Klan? Because I imagine it's like tribalism, like people who go and support sports teams or join the army, people want to feel part of something.
Yeah.
Same as the Ku Klux Klan, like
You just said it. People want to be a part of something.
It's a cult. It's not as if was there people there who didn't even know why they were there, they just wanted to feel part of it? Or was everyone there hating black people?
All of the above. You got people who are just there because they want to belong to something. If the mafia was having open enrollment, they joined that to belong. The Irish Republican Army, they joined that. They want to belong to something because they feel, that they're outcasts. All right. There's that, and then there are those who strongly believe, we are white, and this country needs to be a white country, and da 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 da. You have all different degrees. You have what are called white separatists, and you have what are called white supremacists. A white separatist believes, okay, we can coexist in this country, but black people have to live over there in that neighborhood, Jewish people in that neighborhood, we live in this neighborhood, you have your stores, your swimming pool, your restaurant, your schools. We have ours. We don't mix. If we do that, we're cool. Okay, that's a separatist, separated, right? Supremacists, no. All non-white people need to get out of here. This is our country. We're taking it over.
How organized were they?
They were very organized way back in the day. They made presidents. They made governors. Okay? Today, they're not organized. They're all split up. All right? They think they are, and they still wield some power. White supremacy wields some power. Just look at our current administration. It's full of white supremacists. All right? So it does wield power. But they're not as organized as they once were.
And what's their core beliefs? What is it they actually believe in?
They believe in whiteness, in white womanhood, no interracial marriage, anything like that, and that they are supreme. They should be in charge of this country, and other people who have melanin in their skin are inferior.
And where did they get those beliefs from? Who did they get that from?
Every group seems to have this ego about being, we are superior. We are the ones. Whether for example, over here, it's a black and white thing. In Northern Ireland, for a while there, it was Protestants and Catholics. We don't have that problem here. You could be Catholic, I could be Protestant. It wouldn't even matter. We don't even ask each other. We could care less. Over there, it's a big deal that they put bombs in the tube and all that kind of stuff. So that's why they took out trash cans in the subway stations there. It's very big. In Lebanon, it's the Christians and the Muslims. In Israel, it's the Jews and the Palestinians. In Rwanda, it was the Hutus and the Tutsis. So people have this feeling of, we are the chosen people. We are the ones. And, when you start proclaiming that, it's one thing to proclaim it. It's the one thing, but it's another thing to try to prove it by conquering the other.
Was there any Klan member you were surprised about who walked away from it?
Oh, yeah. Plenty of them. Yeah. I have been the impetus for over 200 to leave. I did not convert them. I gave them reason to convert themselves. But when Roger Kelly, the Imperial, when I met him, he was a Grand Dragon. All right, he moved up the chain. He became Imperial Wizard. He oversaw 13 states in this country. I was very shocked when he left. I mean, yes, we have become friends, and we had dinner together, and he's been here. I've been to his house, been to his rallies. We'd go do different things together. But the whole time, it was working on him. he was rethinking, like, oh my God, Daryl's right about this. I need to rethink this because what I believed before is not true. He would see that it's not true. It's harder for a leader to quit, to renounce that, than it is for some just regular person, regular Klansman, who has no position of authority. Why? Because these people, Grand Dragons, Imperial, their members look up to them. They're like rock stars. They literally, these are your idols. I've seen them sign autographs for their members. I mean, what the heck, you think, this is, Bruce Springsteen or Elvis Presley or Michael Jackson or somebody, that's how much reverence they have. And a lot of them bring people in. So when you are on the seat of power, right, you don't want to get off. You don't want to get off. You feel good up there, right? You look at the man who calls himself our current president right now. When he was on the seat of power before, he didn't want to get off. He tried to insurrect the whole thing, right? So these people, Grand Dragons, Pure Wizards, they're in power. They enjoy the power, but also when they come to the realization that they were wrong and they're thinking about quitting, how do you go tell your people, all these people who admire you, who look up to you, you tell them, I was wrong. I should not have brought you into this organization. They came here to serve you. And now you're going to tell them that you were wrong? How do I do that? Do I keep lying to them so I can maintain my power? Or do I tell them the truth? They struggle with that. It takes a while. And so, eventually, I say, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and tell them.
Did anyone ever try and kill you? Assassinate you or anything because of the damage you were doing with inside the sort of secret society?
I've had threats. I've had fights. But I'm still here.
What do you think it's all about? What do you think life is?
For me, it's about learning. My favorite quote of all time is by an American author. His real name was Samuel Clemens, but he went by the pen name of Mark Twain and wrote a lot of great books. He had a lot of great quotes. My favorite one by him is called the travel quote. And he said, "Travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness, and all of our people need it sorely on these accounts. Broad, wholesome, charitable views of men and things cannot be acquired by vegetating in one little corner of the earth all one's lifetime." That is so true. And that applies to me. That applies to these people. Like I said, I've had the benefit of traveling and seeing different people, different places, different things, learning different cultures, right? They have not, right? So they form their own ideas. And I try to share some things that they have not seen with them to help open them up and see something different and improve their lives. So to me, life is about getting along with your fellow human beings. As Martin Luther King said, we either will live together as brothers or we shall perish as fools. We're given life, and life is short-lived. We're not going to live. Some of us may live to 100, maybe a couple of years over, but the average person doesn't live, beyond 90, if that. Especially in this country with all the stress going on. So life is very short, and you want to try to make the best of it.
How many clan members did you actually speak to all in?
Oh, hundreds. I've been doing this now for 46 years.
Yeah, that's some going what you've done. Like, it's some accomplishments, even though you never set out. It's just planting the seeds. Like you say, that question, why do you hate me when you don't know me?
Yeah.
How bad is racism now, Daryl? How bad do you think it is now compared to early 1900s, 1800s? Do you think it's more silent now, or do you think it's still bad?
It's still bad. We've come a long way, but we have a long way to go. Now, let me tell you what's going on in this country. And the media does not talk about it. The media knows. Trust me, they know, but they don't talk about it. I learned this in 1982, all right, from the head of the American Nazi Party at that time. Okay, I first encountered him in 1974, but then I sought him out in 1982, and I had a conversation with him. His name was Matt Cole. The American Nazi Party was founded by a fellow named George Lincoln Rockwell. And Lincoln Rockwell was murdered by one of his own Nazis right here in Virginia. And so Lincoln Rockwell's right-hand man was Matt Cole. So Matt Cole took over the organization. I first met him in 1974 when I was 15 years old. Vehement, ignorant, racist, white supremacist, very anti-Semitic, very racist. And I was 15 when I first met him. And 8 years later, I went looking for him because now I'm older. And I found him. I had a conversation with him. He told me that they, meaning white supremacists, are very concerned about the year 2042. This is back in 1982, all right? Now, he told me a lot of lies, but this one thing he told me was true. So I've been following it. Let me give you some background. The U.S. Census is taken every decade. The last one taken was in 2020. The next one will be in 2030, all right? And you can fact check me. You can go on the internet, go to uscensus.gov, and you can see the trends, the population, right? When I was a kid, back in the 50s, well, I was born in 58, when I was a baby, the black population in this country was 12%. Native American Indians, 1%. Latino Hispanic Americans, almost 2%. Asian Pacific Islander Americans, almost 3%. Whites were like 86, 87%, right? It was like this, majority and others, right? Blacks might have been right here, other ones like down here, right? Every decade this is happening. And it's well predicted in the year 2042, for the first time in history, this country will be 50-50. 50% white, 50% non-white. Between 2045 and 2050, it's going to flip. And for the first time in the history of this country, whites will become the minority in this country. All right? It'll be like this. All right? Now, there are plenty of white people in this country who don't care. They say, no big deal. What's the big deal? Get on with your life. It's evolution, right? But there is a slice of our population that does care. And those are the ones that we're talking about, the ones that I deal with. And they tell me the Ku Klux Klan, the Proud Boys, the Patriot Front, the neo-Nazis, on and on. Daryl, I don't want my grandkids to be brown. They call it the browning of America, or white genocide through miscegenation, through race mixing. Right? They're very concerned about that. And that's why we're seeing an uptick in lone wolves. Lone wolves are people who act on their own. When I first started doing this work, 45, 46 years ago now, there are basically three groups of people. There was the Ku Klux Klan, there were white power skinheads, and neo-Nazis. Today, you got a whole plethora of these groups. The KKK, the neo-Nazis, the white power skinheads, the Patriot Front, the Vanguard, the National Alliance, the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, on and on and on and on. And they're all saying, come join us, come join us. We're going to take our country back. Because they're seeing this shift. They don't want this to happen. They want to be on the throne of power. All right? And so when they feel that their identity is being erased, I talk to some of these people who feel this way, these patriots, these lone wolf types. They say, we built this country, we discovered this country, and now people are coming here who don't look like us, and they're squeezing us out of our own country. So they run and join these groups that promise to take our country back. Well, when they go and join the group and the group has not taken our country back, they get anxious. And they say, you know what? If the KKK or the neo-Nazis or whoever, the alt-right, can't do it, I'll do it myself. And they walk into a black church, boom, 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 or a synagogue, boom, 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 and start murdering people. These are called lone wolves. They're acting on their own, all right? As we get closer and closer to 2042, mark my words, I wish it wasn't true. As we get closer, we're going to see more and more of these lone wolves because they truly feel in their minds that they are patriots. They're saving the country, their country, right? By getting rid of these non-white vermin. That's in their mind. And every time law enforcement shoots and kills one of them or arrests them, put them in prison, whatever, and they go and search the property, they always find a cache hidden of automatic weapons that are being stockpiled for Rahowa, Rahowa, Rahowa. Those are the first two letters of three words, racial holy war, Rahowa, okay, which is the white supremacist term for the race war. They also call it the Boogaloo, which same thing as Rahowa, okay, not to be confused with the 1960s, music, the Boogaloo, the dance. But if you ever hear the Boogaloo or Rahowa, they're talking about the race war.
But white is the minority anyway. It's only 8% of the world, 8 or 10% of the world. So if you want to be superior, why not have more kids? Why not stay in a family home? I don't think so. I think the stats there, the numbers are dropping.
Yeah.
Like the white people are only 8% of the world. It's not that big anyway.
But see, you don't understand. White supremacists in this country, they think they are the world. The United States is the world. That's why they don't travel. The world is right here. Everybody comes to us. We are the world. Okay? So that's their false mentality.
So you think there could be a race war?
That's what they're looking at. That's what
late
they want.
30s, 40s, because the numbers are coming close to 50-50.
Yes, exactly. Okay. Why do you think Donald Trump wanted Canada to become the 51st state?
Because it's white.
Exactly. Okay. They're trying to stop this. All right. And Canada said, no, we don't want to be part of the United States.
Do you think Donald Trump's racist?
Absolutely. Yeah.
How so?
Everything he said. He's narcissistic. He's a racist. He's very ignorant. He is not. In my opinion, I don't think he won fair and square. I think he was installed. But I played for him a long time ago, around 1999 or 2000, before he ever got into politics. I don't think he's a good president whatsoever. I do not support him politically. But yes, he's extremely racist, and so is most of his staff and the people that he has appointed.
What do you think of the right wing?
The right wing? Well, I would, we have the left wing, we have the right wing. I think they need to come together and meet in the middle. Because they're not going to overtake this country. People are not going to let them. They're going to try, but it'll be to their demise. This country has been right wing since the days of slavery. Slavery is over. They can fly their Confederate flag all they want. That flag will never fly again as a national flag in this country. It never flew as a national flag, but it did have some prominence in the Confederate States of America, the CSA. But this is no longer the CSA, it is the USA. And so, they're dreaming.
Why do you think there is so much divide? Because obviously you've lived it. You've seen, like you say, the big gap, having the conversation and bringing it down. People are so narrow-minded. But why do you think there's so much divide now? More than ever. You've got left, right, white, black, Christian, Muslim, male, even male and female are fighting and arguing, trying to see who's superior. Everybody needs each other. Like, why do you think there's so much divide?
It's the same reason, but I'll give you several little subsets. This country is a very racist country. This country is a very male chauvinist country. And this country is a very religious chauvinist country. All right? We, Americans, we owned people as property for centuries. And people have never gotten over that. They still think that the people that they once owned, even though they're free now, are still inferior. That, We're not being taught proper history in schools, the history of this country. They're trying to, for lack of a better term, whitewash it. All right. Things are being removed from our museums because they are offensive to the history of this country, but they're true. History is history. Every country has history, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the shameful. All those cards need to be turned face up on the table. Address them and then move on. Don't try to erase them. Don't try to rewrite them. Don't try to revision them. Don't try to omit them. History is history. All right. So we have been very discriminatory against women in this country. We weren't paying them equal pay for equal work with men. You know, some women worked harder than men but got less money. Some of them could not go to school because they were females. They could not hold jobs because they were females, just like black people. All right. So we've been very discriminatory against everybody but white males. Now, does that mean every white male is a racist or chauvinist? No, absolutely. There are plenty of great white males, females, whatever, right? But white people in this country have privilege. And the ones who have the most privilege are white males. And they're seeing that change because now women are having rights. Women are able to, back in the day, if a man raped you, your boyfriend raped you, he beat you up, whatever, the saying was, you made your bed, you lay in it. That was the saying. Now women can sue men and get paid. Women did not, they used to not want to go to court if somebody raped them because they felt that they get raped on the witness stand again, and the guy's going to walk anyway. So why put myself through that? That was the mentality. Now they're coming out. Say, no, I'm not letting you get away with this. I'm going to stand up for my rights. And good for them. Good for black people. Good for Muslims. Good for gay people. Good for whoever feels that their rights are being trampled. And because the power structure sees that, and they're trying to divide and conquer. And that's the problem right now in this country. People are not willing to talk to one another. That you got the extreme right wing, you got the extreme left wing. The people that we need to uplift are the ones who get these polarities. Focus on the ones in the middle, bring them up together, and then those on the far, they will eventually come into the middle, and you can get them as well.
If you were president, Daryl, what 5 things would you change to make the world a better place?
I would have a lot of this stuff taught in elementary school so that people see everything. You tone it down according to the age demographic, and then you increase it as you get older and you have better understanding. But don't hide these things from kids or people, all right? I would want more equality for women, more equality. People came here to be able to worship as they chose to worship. When those pilgrims or whoever came from England, they want to escape the king because he wanted them to worship him. They came originally. The thing was they came here to worship as they chose. Today we've kind of twisted that history. This country was founded upon Christianity. If you're a non-Christian, get out of here. No. They did not come here to be Christians. They came here to worship as they chose, because this was the land of the free. You want to worship Allah. You want to worship Jehovah. You want to worship Buddha, or whatever God is in the Hindu religion or whatever. That's what America offered, and now it's been twisted into white Christian.
What's the most important thing? What's the one thing you want people to get from this interview today?
That we all have the capability to learn from one another. People, human beings, are like jigsaw puzzle pieces. Every piece is a unique piece. All right? And the puzzle is not beautiful until all those pieces come together and form the beauty of the picture of the puzzle. Everybody has something to contribute, no matter how big the piece is, no matter how small the piece is, whether it's a corner piece or a piece in the middle. Everybody has something that makes that puzzle whole. And we need to get out of our bubbles. We need to explore new people. Well, I call it walking across the cafeteria. What do I mean by that? You can do it physically. You can do it virtually. For example, in a metropolitan city, like a Washington, D.C., a New York, Baltimore, Chicago, Los Angeles, you have a wide variety of people. Let's say you're in a school, or you're in a company. Either place, there's a diverse demographic in that institution. You may be working on a project with some of these people. You work on the same project. You might even be sharing the same cubicle, the little space, right? But what happens at 12 noon? You go downstairs in your building, your school, or your company. At 12 noon, you go downstairs to the cafeteria to have your lunch. And what happens? Blacks sit with blacks. Hispanics sit with Hispanics. This group sits with this group. They self-segregate. Does that mean that they're racist? No. People tend to feel more comfortable around familiarity. All right? Now, I would suggest that once or twice a week, you get up from your comfort group and you walk across the cafeteria and sit at somebody else's table that you don't normally sit with at lunchtime. All right? Now, if they say, whoa, 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 you don't belong here, go back to your table, there's a problem and it needs to be addressed. But chances are that won't happen. Sit at somebody else's table. You work together, then break bread together for a change, because you have something to teach them. You have something to learn from them. And in the process, there's a good chance you will make a new friend. All right? That's how we solve problems. We don't need the government to force us to do this and do that. We can do it on our own. The government had the chance to outlaw segregated busing, but they didn't. We did that. Martin Luther King did the bus boycott, so black people could now ride in the front of the bus. He wasn't part of the government, but he organized that. And today we can sit anywhere we want to sit in the bus. We can even drive the bus, whatever, right? So we have the capacity to make change. Let's use it. Let's use it, right? So that's what I would like to see.
Did you ever think you would still be doing this 50 years later?
No, never.
Does it ever get tiring?
No, I realized, that the fight is not over. It's still, it's come a long way, but it still has a long way to go. But I get rejuvenated when I see the light bulb pop on in someone's minds, and they realize, oh my, I've really done the wrong thing. I need to work hard. I know a lot of them. There's some who have left, but they don't come out and talk about it. They want to put that behind them, or they're fearful that they will be targeted, and that can happen too. All right. But I know a lot of them who come out with me and stand on my stage and talk about the bad things that they did and why it was bad, and they renounce their own movement, and they work hard trying to de-radicalize people who are still in that movement, and they talk about trying to prevent young people from going down that rabbit hole and joining these movements.
Did you ever speak to people, because people in the rallies having a conversation and maybe leave a couple of years later where they haven't really done anything, but there's people who kill over skin color. Have you ever spoke to people
over where?
Like when you go into rallies, maybe people who's been there for 2-3 years, they haven't really done anything mad where it's life-threatening. They've maybe just went and left.
Yeah.
But have you ever spoke to someone who's maybe killed someone
Yes.
because of skin color, and
Yes.
then there's not really any coming back from that? But what's their method of thinking when they realise, I've killed someone because of their skin color, and now I don't believe in that? Have you spoke to people?
I have a number of them, as a matter of fact, and they have to take accountability. Just because you quit and you renounce it, that's not enough. You have to be accountable for your actions. If you've hurt somebody or eliminated somebody, you have to be accountable for that. All right, and only then can that be, forgiven after you have taken that accountability or made restitution, etc. But I believe that most people are redeemable. There are some people on all sides, black, white, or other, who will never be redeemed. they will go to their grave being hateful, violent, racist, anti-Semitic, whatever. But you don't give up on those people. You still try to work with them. But you pick your priorities. I know a lot of those people who are racist, violent, and anti-Semitic, who all they want to do is fight or whatever, or kill people. Even some of those who I never thought would ever come around have come around. All right. Not all of them. Some of them die and they go to their grave. Some of them will never change. All right. But you move those people down your list of priorities and deal with the ones who are like that, but they're willing to sit down and have a conversation, because you never know what might trigger the light bulb to come on. I'll give you an example. I was riding around in my car with an exalted cyclops. That means a district leader. And we got on the topic of black crime. And he made a statement that I've heard many, many times. I'm driving, he's over here in the passenger seat. And he said, they say that this figure of authority that nobody has ever seen, named they, they say that that black people are born with a gene that makes them violent. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, well, who's doing all the carjackings and drive-bys in Southeast? He was referring to Southeast Washington, D.C. Southeast Washington, D.C. is predominantly black. There's some white people who live there, but it's predominantly black, and it's very high crime ridden over there. I said, okay. I said, it's black people. I said, but that's what lives there. You're not considering the demographics. I said, who's doing all the crime up in Bangor, Maine? White people, because that's what lives there. He says, no. The demographics have nothing to do with it. You all are born with this gene. And I said, look, I'm as black as anybody you've ever seen. I said, I have never done a carjacking. I've never done a drive-by. How do you explain that? He didn't even think about it. He already had the answer. He answered me like that. He said, your gene is latent, hasn't come out yet. I'm like, what? How do you argue with somebody that far out, right? So I was silent. I was speechless. And he's over here like this. Mm-hmm. Nothing to say, right? So I realized, if I were to give him a stack of books from the floor to the ceiling, written by neuroscientists or whatever, disproving, his gene theory, it wouldn't matter to him. He knows that he's right. I had to go to where he was. So I used his figure of authority. I said, I had to pause for a second and think about it. I said, okay, I need to go where he is. I said, well, they say, the authority again, right? I said, they say that all white people are born with a gene that makes them a serial killer. He said, well, how do you figure? I said, name me 3 black serial killers. He couldn't do it. I said, look, I'm going to give you one. Just name me 2. He couldn't do it. I said, Charles Manson, Jeffrey Dahmer, Henry Lee Lucas, John Wayne Gacy, Ted Bundy, Albert DeSalvo, the Boston Strangler, David Berkowitz, Son of Sam, on and on and on. I said, son, you are a serial killer. He said, Daryl, I've never killed anybody. I said, your gene is latent, hasn't come out yet. He said, well, that's stupid. I said, well, duh. I said, you're right. It is stupid. I said, but it's no more stupid of me to say that about you than what you said about me. And he got very, very quiet. But I could tell his wheels were zzz in his head. He was thinking. And then he paused, and then he changed the subject. 5, maybe 6 months later, he quit the Klan based on that stupid conversation. That was the first robe I ever got.
Has any of them ever said to you, like, are you some sort of wizard or some sort of Imperia where you can plant those seeds in their mind to get them thinking, to spark seeing the world differently? Like, for that, is a sort of genius behind your madness. Has anyone ever said to you, like, what are you? Like, how you can do that to someone who's so far gone in their own ideology, you've brought them back to then question it?
Well, they call me the Klan Whisperer, I guess for that reason. But I don't think it's any special power or any special tool. Like I said earlier, what I've gathered is these 5 core values that I apply. to, when I have conversations. I'm willing to listen to people. Yeah, they're going to insult me. They're going to, try to make me feel inferior to elevate themselves, because after all, they're white supremacists. They're supreme. So you cannot be supreme unless somebody else is inferior, right? So a lot of people are not willing to sit down and hear that stuff, because they'll get angry, they want to fight, and you call me what, and all that kind of stuff. I know people can get along because I've been around the world. I've seen different colors of people get along. They have not seen that. They have not seen that. All they know is, you used to be my slave. You used to be the woman in the house making babies for me and fixing my breakfast. You didn't have a job before. What's this job you have? And you're making more money than me?
For anybody watching, brother, that's racist, that hates other skin colors, what advice would you have for them?
Walk across the cafeteria. Like I said, you can do it virtually. If you work at a company or whatever, your company may have other branches or whatever, or other companies that they do business with, where you're in contact with them over Zoom, you never meet them, whatever. Call up one of these people off company time and say, hey, tell me about yourself. How many kids do you have? What does your wife do? What are your hobbies? Get to know one another outside of business, across the internet. If you're in the workplace physically, go sit at somebody else's table rather than sit with the same people every day you have lunch. You sit with the same black people, the same white people, the same Hispanic people. Walk across the cafeteria. All right. That's how we learn. And today for me to get the exposure that I had as a child, I had to cross the Atlantic Ocean. I had to cross the Pacific Ocean, and I've done that many times. All right. Today, you don't even have to do that unless you want to. You can hop on the internet, call somebody in Australia, call somebody in China, in Africa, whatever, and have a conversation in real time with these people and learn about them. You might not get the taste of the food or the smell of the environment or whatever, but you can learn. You can broaden your horizons rather than stay in this mentality where you have to speculate about what that person over there is like. You concoct whatever you think. Okay, I don't have to concoct. I've been there.
And for anybody that's watching that's maybe want to ask you questions or buy your books, where can I get in contact with you? Do you have a website?
Sure. My website is daryldavis.com. Daryl is spelled Daryl, only one R, daryldavis.com. And feel free to email me at daryl@daryldavis.com. Daryl@daryldavis.com. You can get the books on Amazon. It's called The Klan Whisperer. Don't look for clandestine relationships. That book is no longer in print. But The Klan Whisperer already has a lot of the first book, clandestine relationships, already in it, plus updates and news stories. And go to your country's Amazon and pick it up.
My brother, would you like to finish up on anything else?
Hey, I'm good. If you're good.
Yeah, I'm good. Listen, again, thank you for your time. An amazing life story. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed what you've achieved, what you've overcome, and how you can connect with people at a deeper level. That's what it's all about. It's all about communication and understanding. But a lot of people can learn from this interview today. And like I say, I wish you nothing but the best for the future. And God bless you, brother.
Thank you very much for having me. And I hope we can do it again sometime. And thank you for your playing a role in getting these kinds of stories out there, perhaps impacting and influencing other people. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you, my brother.